Welcome back. Today I will be reacting to Bruce Rivers for the first time. So many of you have recommended him to me, and if I take a quick look, apparently he is a criminal lawyer that gives reactions to high-profile court cases on YouTube, which I think is pretty cool. The title of this video is The Forfeiture of Andrew Tate's Bugatti and 10 Other Cars and New Allegations Surface. Just a quick disclaimer before I start my reaction. I am not a legal expert, but I do specialize in the study of sociological patterns, shifts, and trends. So although I'm not confident enough to speak with conviction on the intricacies of Andrew Tate's court case, I do think I can give a pretty good synopsis of Andrew Tate's impact on society. So if it's okay with you, I would like to share some of my thoughts on Andrew Tate and the situation he is currently in. If that's not okay with you, feel free to skip ahead by like 5 minutes. I guess I'll start with this. Apparently, Andrew Tate was recently arrested and is under investigation in Romania for human sex trafficking, among other unspecified charges. Originally, when I heard the news, I thought it was entirely possible that Tate might have actually staged his own arrest as a PR stunt. Given how thirsty for attention he appears to be, I thought it made sense that he would create a scenario in which he was arrested, it would be highly publicized, and then he would be released promptly without being charged for anything. I thought a ploy like this would be perfect to increase his popularity, strengthen support from his followers, and bring credence to the paranoid narrative he's constructed that the deep state is out to get him. I figured Andrew Tate is way too clever, wealthy, and well-connected for anything to come out of his arrest. First off, the guy is loaded with cash, which means he can afford an excellent legal team. Secondly, he apparently has close ties to government officials and organized crime syndicates in Romania. Thirdly, he has also bragged about how easy it is to bribe government officials and law enforcement in Romania. Fourthly, he's one of the most rich and famous men in Romania and probably generates millions of dollars in tax revenue for the government. Surely they wouldn't want to jeopardize that cash flow by keeping him detained, right? So I was under this impression that he was actually playing 10-dimensional chess, which might seem silly now that we have more information. So why would I be under this impression? Simply because he is brilliant at marketing his brand. Andrew Tate presents himself as the main protagonist, the hero in his own television series. Someone who's misunderstood and constantly under persecution for spreading the truth to those who need it. He sees himself as a messiah, one who was sent by God to deliver young men from sadness and despair. And when he gives these vague depictions of who is after him, it makes you want to root for him because he is leading you, the audience, on this crazy adventure. It's almost like the plot for a James Bond movie. Now, I'm not going to say that I've completely backtracked off my original theory that this investigation could be staged, but I am saying it's far less plausible at this point, right? And why is that? Well, after doing some research on Romania's tumultuous history with human sex trafficking, I was forced to adjust my stance and adopt a new one. Which is to say, I think I might have overestimated Andrew Tate's intelligence to craft the elaborate plot that I've described. Now, I think a more plausible explanation is that this entire ordeal is actually not staged, and that he might actually be facing some serious legal trouble. For those of you who don't know, Romania has one of the worst human rights records in the Western Hemisphere when it comes to human trafficking. Apparently, it is super common for women and girls to be imported, exported, and abducted, right? This happens at astronomical rates compared to other European countries. I mean, I remember sitting in a workshop at Harvard a few years ago, listening to one of the speakers who was conducting fieldwork in Romania on this topic. She talked about the interviews she was doing with victims of trafficking and traffickers themselves to understand their psychology. And she even mentioned how it was common when a girl from a low socioeconomic class was abducted and someone calls the police station to make a report, the police actually wouldn't conduct a proper search for the missing person, nor would they even document their name. So fast forward 5 years later, and now I'm hearing about this guy called Andrew Tate and the things that he is involved in. Although I don't know what's going on the inside, things are starting to make more sense. What I do know is that over the past 2 years, the Romanian government has increased its efforts to combat human trafficking. At the same time, Andrew Tate has been vocal about his participation in this enterprise. So, if you ask me, this is the worst case scenario for Andrew Tate and a perfect storm for Romanian prosecutors, because it just so happens that the Romanian government has been taking major steps to crack down on human trafficking. At the same time, Andrew Tate's stock has been rising, and these allegations are continuing to be made. This, coupled with mounting pressure from the international community, particularly the UN and NGOs that are designed to help women escape from trafficking, could make Andrew Tate's defense one of the most high-profile cases of human trafficking in modern history, especially if there are other charges associated with the case. And I'll say it again, I'm not a lawyer, but I do think it's possible that Andrew Tate's confessions have finally caught up to him. I can imagine a scenario where Romanian prosecutors want to use him as an example to prove to the world that Romania is opposed to human trafficking, which remains a questionable assertion because in Romania, trafficking will get you on average 4 years in prison. Now, you compare that to trafficking laws here in the US, which come with an average of 192 months, which is 16 years to be exact. Now, if I had to guess, the only way Andrew Tate would get prison time, given how lenient Romania is with their human sex trafficking laws, would be if prosecutors were able to get him on other charges. But without further ado, let's start the reaction. I'm curious to hear about what this guy, Bruce Rivers, has to say.
The criminal lawyer. Who is Bruce Rivers? He's the criminal lawyer. And who is Bruce Rivers? He's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Was that a gun? Look at the guns in his background. This guy's a gangster.
And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, coming to you with breaking news with my pearl handle pistol cufflinks. I am board certified in the area of criminal defense. That's why my opinion matters in this. Just because I know what I'm doing, that's all. Not because I'm such a great guy.
Okay,
anyway, before we get to what we're going to react to today, which is a little more Andrew Tate news, this is brought to you by eSide.com.
Shout out to the sponsor, but let's go ahead and skip that.
So, here's the deal. Andrew Tate has now had 11 of his vehicles seized. One of them was a Bugatti. And the Bugatti is worth $2.9 million.
2.9. 10 other luxury cars seized after sex abuse charges. So, are these recent charges? Is this part of the human trafficking charge?
Now, you can't just seize somebody's assets. They have to be connected to somehow to illegal activity. Well, we know that Andrew Tate only had $70,000 when he left the fight game, right? And then he blew $30,000 of that on gambling.
Is that what he said?
I don't recommend to any of you guys. So let's talk about forfeiture, asset forfeiture, for example, for a second. Let's say I'm a drug dealer.
I sold drugs. I was a fighter, but fighting wasn't paying the bills, sold drugs. So I'm selling drugs.
Let's just use the drug analogy. And let's say that I'm making...
He confessed to selling drugs.
Let's say I'm a drug dealer.
I sold drugs. I was a fighter, but fighting wasn't paying the bills, sold drugs. So I'm selling drugs.
Let's just use the drug analogy. And let's say that I'm making $100,000 a month and I'm making big money. And I go ahead and I take a house, I buy a house, and I do all...
For his sake, I hope the prosecutors don't find a paper trail where they could actually provide evidence that he was a drug dealer and did make enough money to buy a residence with drug money, because that would not go well for him in court. If I had to guess.
And I go ahead and I take a house, I buy a house, and I do all these improvements to it, and I use cash,
with drug money,
and or cashier's checks, and I just try to launder this money through my house. Well, I've got no other visible signs of income, and so now let's say I have a $2.3 million house, and I've been dealing weed for months. Well, if I've got no visible signs of income, and they catch me selling weed, it's probably from weed. Anything that's connected to illegal activity can be forfeited if it is the product of ill-gotten gains. In this case, there's 6 women that are accusing Andrew Tate of forcing them to have sex on camera, basically imprisoning them and making them work without being able to leave, and basically forced fraud or coercion, right? 6 of them. So when they take these assets, or let's say you have stocks, like some guy who's got a Ponzi scheme, he's selling stock and he's selling investments, blah, blah, blah. Well, you take all the assets that are seized and then they distribute them among the people who are among the injured. So they could take these assets and use them for restitution, use them for the cost of the investigation, a whole host of things that you can do with that. So where does this go now? One of the first things I want to know is, what's his lawyer doing to investigate this case? Now, he has 6 people that are accusing him. Odds are he's got some of the women would be supporting him, you would think, unless he's fucked up every relationship so bad that everybody's against him. But I doubt that that's the case. And so what I would do if I was his lawyer, I would be working anybody that's not part of that original 6 to try to get them to discredit the original 6 and discredit them with hard, cold facts that you can't dispute.
Either way, you have 6 plaintiffs. That's a lot of people. I'd imagine it might be a lot easier to discredit 1 or 2 plaintiffs, but when you have 6 whose stories align and overlap and intersect, he might need 60 girls to come forward and discredit those 6 in order to tip the scales in his favor.
Money that they received, trips that they went on, gifts that they received, those kinds of things. Now, according to Vice talked to 2 women. And these 2 women reported all kinds of sexual assaults, rape, and some beatings and other really heinous activity back in 2015 when he was in London.
And I've seen a couple clips where he admits to beating girls to keep them in line. So having women come forward to correspond your own confessions might be damning.
And the Crown Prosecution Service, or CPS, declined to prosecute, and one of the reasons they declined to prosecute back then was because of some voice notes, basically on their phones, saying that they were drunk when this happened, and it's voice notes between the 2 ladies. These cases are very difficult to prove for the prosecution if there's other incriminating evidence that incriminates the victim, or the girls reporting the crime. So the first thing his lawyer is going to do is, okay, what do we need to do to discredit these women? And that's exactly where he's going to head. There's so much out there, though. There's just so much out there. His reason is a matter of record why he went to Romania to begin with. And so you've got all that kind of stuff going on.
And I'd imagine if the prosecution is able to pull other people in that are like neutral parties, so maybe... I don't know who they would pull in, but I don't know, man.
There's got to be other women out there, not one of the defendants, but other women out there who will discredit or attempt to discredit these 6 accusers. In this 2015 allegation, Tate and his lawyers denied the allegations, and they said the reason that they were doing this was because they fired him, and that there were these messages between them back and forth, basically saying they're going to get him and this is how they're going to do it. And so that's why they dropped that case. This is a very different case, what we have here today. We have 6 people. We don't know exactly what they know and exactly what they're telling the authorities, except for just the general vague nature of what's going on. The allegation back then was that he had strangled these women. And one of the quotes was, "Which one of you hoes is going to be the one I'm going to strangle today," or something like that. Now, the Crown Prosecution Service declined that prosecution. And they did so because they didn't feel that they had the burden, they couldn't meet the burden of proof. And I assume his lawyer will do something similar in this current case, where they just really have to try to discredit each and every one of these women. The problem is if they're corroborated even a little bit, it's going to be very difficult for him to get over that. So you have to look at what is the evidence that they have. They have the evidence of these 6 girls testifying against him, right? They're gonna have some story, and it's got to be X, Y, or Z. But then they also have his own statements. His own statements and just a shit ton of videos that he's put out there for Hustler University. And those can be used against him. Now his argument's going to be, oh, this was said in jest, this was bravado, this is just a persona, blah, 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 right? And that may or may not be. But when you are arguing, I didn't mean what I said, it's going to be difficult for us to believe you now. Are you lying then? Or are you lying now? And when you have something that's self-serving, and you watch some of his statements, he really takes glee in the abuse that he and the control and the power that he has over these women. So it's going to be a tough sell for him to say that these were just jokes. This is just a persona. This is whatever, especially if these women are corroborated. He indicated in a statement that this is 40% of the reason why he left England to go to Romania.
Probably 40% of the reason I moved to Romania, because in Eastern Europe, none of this garbage flies. When people say, why did you move to Romania? And I explain my 5 reasons. One of them is the Me Too era. They go, oh, well, you're a rapist. I say, no, I'm not a fucking rapist. But I like the idea of being able to just say to do what I want. I like being free.
It's still, women are in a different position than they were 10 years ago. But it's still...
That shit sounds spooky given the charges he's facing, to get on camera and say, I moved to Romania because I like the idea of being free. Free to do what, man? I don't know.
Still very, very difficult to prove. There's a really high burden. Any discrepancy can be viewed as lying. And so it's a difficult case for the prosecution in a vacuum. But
that's interesting.
When you have his own words, you have the testimony of 6 women, and you have a lot to back it up. Because my guess is that there probably is even some footage in his $600,000 house that he had, by the way, where some of this is probably going to be corroborated. So,
did they seize the house too?
That he had, by the way, where
they got to have something on him if they're seizing his assets, bro. They got to have something on him. The prosecutors got to have something on him.
Some of this is probably going to be corroborated. So we'll keep following Mr. Tate. And, it's tough when somebody takes your shit, especially if they're that expensive, because, they don't really know how to handle a Bugatti. Bugatti is a $3 million car, basically, and it wouldn't take much to wreck something on that. So you got some ex-welder who is the tow truck driver, hooks a hook to the front of the thing. And so we'll see you next time here on Criminal.
All right, I really enjoyed this, and I actually learned a lot from this guy. So who knows, depending on the views and the reception I get from this video, I might react to Bruce Rivers more frequently. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about the case. Let me know what you think about Andrew Tate. I'm really curious to get a pulse on what the people think. So yeah, I'd really appreciate it. See you next time. Peace.